Hi guys, welcome back to another video. This video is going to be my April 2021 reading wrap up, and I did pretty well this month. I read a total of 5 books and 2 graphic novels. This is in fact not correct. I actually read another book as well. I read a book called Moose Murders. I can't remember who it's by now, but it's a play that is rumoured to be the worst play ever performed on Broadway, historically lasting only one performance, and I read it with a group of friends. It was by far the worst book I read this month, and I gave it 2 stars. I probably would have given it 1 star had I not been reading it and making fun of it with some friends, but yeah, back to the video. So I'll go through the 2 graphic novels first. So the first one that I read, well, actually the last one that I read in the month, but the first one I'm going to talk about because I gave it 4 stars is I Will Judge You by Your Bookshelf by Snider. It's just a very cute collection of comics. This is the art style, all about reading and readers, and I related to this very heavily. I think that I can think of a few of my friends who would really enjoy this book, so I'm probably going to get them a copy, but I really enjoyed this. And the second one was In Love and Pajamas by Catana Comics. I really love this art style, and it's just literally a collection of 1-page comics that I'm assuming they've been released online. I think they made their start online. This is my first collection I've actually bought physically, but I plan to go through and collect the rest of these. I really enjoyed it and gave it 5 stars. I didn't really go into much detail with either of those, mainly because of the fact there's no plot to speak of, but I really enjoyed them. So for the rest of the books that I read this month, I'm going to go through and go from the ones I like the least to the ones I like the most, and I really liked everything I read this month, really. So I'll start off with my 4 stars. So I'll talk about these 2 in tandem. This is Fabulosa and this is Fantabulosa by the same author, Paul Baker. So I read Fabulosa as part of a book club read. I was actually quite late to the party with actually finishing it because of the fact that it's non-fiction and I couldn't find an audiobook version, so it took me quite a while to get through this. And the sort of tagline is the story of Polari, Britain's secret gay language. So Polari is like it said, is a language that was used by gay people up until like the 60s or 70s in order to be able to speak in code and not be detected and not be outed by what they were saying. And I thought this was absolutely fascinating. I'd never heard of Polari before it was recommended in the book club, and I really loved this. Now at the end of the book there's a sort of glossary of terms, but I think that I wanted to have a wider knowledge of the sort of full breadth of the language, so I downloaded, they basically translated the Bible into Polari and have it available free online for people to download, so I downloaded that onto my Kindle. I'll leave a link where you can find that down below because I'm finding it absolutely fascinating. And also I got the Polari dictionary by the same author, Fantabulosa. So I'm putting this in my red pile, but it is quite literally a dictionary, and I have sort of flicked through this and read a lot of the meanings, but I haven't sort of read it cover to cover. So you can call it half read, but I really enjoyed this. My next 4 star was When the Stars Sang, again another book club book by Karen J. Werlinger. And this was a Sarton Women's Book Award finalist. I really enjoyed this. I didn't expect to, given the fact that this is not really the sort of fiction I pick up. So this is about a woman who, after her grandmother has died, decides to leave everything behind, leave her whole life behind, and go back and live in her grandmother's old house. It's in a small town on a very secluded island, and it's about her sort of dealing with her past trauma and sort of healing old wounds, and I really enjoyed it. I find that with the nature of this sort of story with a small town setting, you often end up with many of the townspeople being focal parts of the story, and just by the nature of that, you don't spend that much time with each of them until you get quite a way into the novel, so it took me until about halfway through to really get invested in the story. At the beginning I was really getting townsfolk mixed up, but really once I got halfway through I was really invested. I could tell everyone apart, and I just flew through the rest of it in like a couple of hours, and it was a really enjoyable read. I think that it's very sort of spiritual, and I think that people who are really into that might really like this. It was almost like a utopian town, like everybody was out to help everybody else. I don't see myself continuing in the series, but this was a really, really fun read. I loved the cast of characters. I loved the female-female relationship that was at the forefront of this, and yeah, I would highly recommend this. My next read, which I gave 4.5 stars to, was Tell the Wolves I'm Home by Carol Rifter Brunt. I've been meaning to read this for absolutely ages. Again, another book club book that I actually recommended this. I think it was for November's month, and I just never picked it up. I never got around to it, so I just skipped that meeting. Oops. But I loved this so much. So this is about a young girl whose uncle has died, and she was so close to this uncle, and the uncle died of AIDS, and after he died she is contacted by her uncle's boyfriend, and they sort of heal together. And I think the synopsis could have done with it giving a little bit more away. I think that from the synopsis I had assumed that the main character would know absolutely nothing and would have to take quite a lot of the novel to find out things that we already knew from the back of the book. And it's like, and I'm so glad that didn't end up happening. I think that she already knew that he was gay and that he died of AIDS going into the novel, so we weren't having to go through her finding out that information that you could quite clearly garner from the back, which I really loved. I think also this girl is 14, and I think that voice was very genuine to a 14-year-old without going so far into being annoying or irritating. And it's a really, really interesting study of grief, essentially. I think that she is dealing with this heavy, heavy burden of grief because she got on with her uncle so well. But also, I think that something else covered in here that was really interesting is people sort of right to grieve or perceived right to grieve. And you can pretty much garner this from the back of the book, but the boyfriend is just sort of completely excluded from anything to do with the funeral or the grieving process. And that part was so heartbreaking to read about. The fact that the family decided that this person who was so close to their brother or their brother-in-law or however they were related, that they had far more of a right to grieve than his boyfriend because of the fact they didn't agree with their lifestyle. And I found that so heartbreaking to read, mainly because of the fact that this will have happened so much during the AIDS epidemic, where blood relatives took everything away from boyfriends and lovers because of the fact that they didn't see them as relevant to their lives. And I thought that was so, so heartbreaking. And this was a fascinating look at that, and I would highly, highly recommend. It's funny that the next book I have to talk about is, again, non-fiction. I read very little non-fiction this year, and I've read 3 this month. So, next one is No More Plastic by Martin Doré. I'm going to have to look that up afterwards. But this was brilliant. I saw this in a local shop that's just popped up, which is basically like everything's made out of recycled something else. So I love the way it's decorated too. They've got an entire wall that's completely decorated with cassette tapes, but they had this book and I thought, let's just give it a read. And it told me a lot of stuff I already know. I already work on climate change and the damage that humans are doing to the environment, so I already know a lot of these. However, I do think that this book pointed out a lot of things that everyday people can do that aren't much effort. Everyday changes that people can make that are practically no effort and will add up to a big difference. So even though I really enjoyed this and I gave this 5 stars. I thought it was amazing and really well laid out for what it is. It was set up, it's got a very big font, lots of sort of icons, and it's split up into very, very short, cohesive, not even chapters, just little, I'm just going to call them sections. I think that it was really well told and set up and narrated, and it was very human, but also gave stats, and I just thought it was great. And even though I really enjoyed this, I am going to be passing it along to friends, and I'm going to encourage them, once they've read this, to pass it on to the next person, and so that this book can do more good in the hands of more people. Yeah, I really love this. So, an incredibly successful reading month this month. I didn't have anything that was lower than a 4-star, and I loved everything. So, brilliant. What was something you read in April? I'd love to hear down below in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.